everybody, it's Tim, back here with vlog number 2. Thank you for all the positive feedback on vlog number 1 about the Def Leppard box set that came out back in June of 2019. I'm hoping to do these on a more weekly, maybe bi-weekly basis and really just discuss different music topics that I have inside my head. I've got a lot of music knowledge from years of reading liner notes, etc., and album notes and everything else, and you know, it just really helps me to kind of get this out into some kind of format, even if only a handful of people see it. So I've got a lot of different topics I want to cover over the next few weeks, but today what I want to focus on is remasters. Just to give you a little history, remastering is something that really came to prominence in the early to mid 90s, and basically what it is, you know, they basically take the master tapes, which in most cases in the 70s, 80s, and before were recorded on analog equipment. And initially, when CDs first came out in the mid to late 80s or whatever it was, basically those analog sounds were basically just mushed onto that digital format with no real digital mastering or anything else. That's why a lot of those old CDs from the late 80s really just don't sound very good. So what they started doing was taking the original master tapes, separating everything out, mastering everything digitally, the guitar tracks, the drum tracks, etc., and then putting it all back to hopefully make a clearer, crisper, and in some cases louder sound. I've heard a lot of criticism over the years in regards to remastering, saying that it compresses the sound, or it does this, or taking away the background noise somehow takes away from the richness of the record or the album. Again, that's up to, you know, anybody's individual opinion, but I've certainly enjoyed them over the years, and personally, when I have a playlist in the car, I prefer everything kind of play at the same volume rather than one song be loud and the next song be barely audible. You know, it's just kind of annoying to me. So, you know, like I said, remastering really kind of started taking off in the early 90s. One of the first remasters I remember seeing was Aerosmith. All their back catalog from the 70s and early 80s was remastered and re-released by Sony, I think around 1993, and that really kind of got the ball rolling on that. And over the years, there have been several fabulous remaster sets. A couple that come to mind are first the Kiss remasters that came out 96, 97. They did a fantastic job on these. Kiss, say what you want about them musically, they never seem to fail when it comes to marketing or, you know, doing things the right way in that regard. So, you know, great remasters from them. Also, another set of remasters you may want to check out would be the ones done by Motley Crue. I've got Shout at the Devil right here, as well as the 30th anniversary of Girls, Girls, Girls. Both of these very well done. The remasters, you can really hear the richness of the music. You can hear every single track individually as you're listening to the songs. You can hear the bass, you can hear the guitar, you can hear the drums, you can hear everything individually. You know, and I think that's the test of a true remaster. And also, like I covered on the last set, were the Def Leppard CD collection, CD and vinyl collections coming out. This is vinyl, the CD collection number 1 that came out last year. Again, fantastic remasters. Def Leppard has also put out several deluxe versions and whatnot of their albums over the years. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that a remaster, a remix, and a re-recording are 3 very different things. Remastering is what I covered before. Remixing is where they basically just totally remix the master tapes just to give it a different sound, maybe to try to bring it current or whatever. And then re-recording, you know, is where a band goes back and re-records their hits, you know, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why they do that sometimes, but, you know, and in some cases, you might get all 3 of those in one set, like this Whitesnake set right here. I'll cover this at some point, kind of like I did the Def Leppards, but basically, this is the box set for their 1984 album, Slide It In. You have remastering, you have remixing, and in some cases, if you know the story of this album, the re-recording is kind of the story of this album. So we'll cover this at a later point. But what I really wanted to cover today was a company from overseas that I discovered a few years ago called Rock Candy Remasters. And what this company does is basically gets the licensing for albums that have maybe kind of fallen by the wayside over history. You know, they're not the big bands, the Motley Crues, the Kisses, the Aerosmiths, you know, whoever, you know, Bon Jovis or whatever. You know, these are maybe some of the smaller bands from the 70s and 80s, like your, you know, your Rats, you know, I got a list of them here. your Rats, your Faster Pussycats, Dokken, Quiet Riot, Europe, Winger, Bullet Boys, Damn Yankees, LA Guns, which we're listening to behind me here. Just some of the bands who, you know, had their heyday in the 70s or the 80s or whatever, but maybe the catalog overall didn't stand up tall enough for the record labels to go back and completely remaster and re-release all their stuff. So I was pretty happy to find a label, you know, that actually is taking a lot of those old records that I personally love and remastering and doing them right. Again, it's called Rock Candy Remasters. And the first one that I had was for a band called Head East. That's from the Midwest. They were a mid-70s band from the Midwest. Same place that Styx and REO Speedwagon and Cheap Trick and bands like that are from. They did not achieve the same success as those other bands, but they were still a great band. And a lot of their stuff was not available in digital formats or CD or whatever. And one day on Amazon, I come across their live album from 1979 on this company called Rock Candy Records. So reluctantly, or I shouldn't say reluctantly, I guess skeptically or whatever the word is, went ahead and ordered the CD through Amazon, and it was delivered a few days later, and it's right here in my hand. And I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised at how good everything sounded, how crisp. You know, everything sounded just as rich as the vinyl that I've always had for years. In addition to that, you know, they stay very true to the cover art and everything else. And each one of their CDs will generally have a 12-page book with an essay telling the story of the album, and even sometimes having some of the members of the band talk about the album. So this was the first one I ever had, Head East. And it took me a couple of years before I really started going through and looking at the rest of their catalog, which is all available on their website. I think it's rockcandyrecords.com or something like that. You know, just Google it, Rock Candy Records, you'll find it. A couple other ones that I picked up recently were the LA Guns first two records. This is LA Guns' debut record right here, as well as LA Guns' second record, Cocked and Loaded. Again, if you're a fan of 80s rock, you're pretty familiar with this band. Also, for those who are into music trivia, the guitarist for the band LA Guns is a guy named Tracy Guns, who incidentally is also the Guns in Guns N' Roses. He was actually in Guns N' Roses in the early days before Slash joined. So a little trivia for you there. But again, you know, fantastic remasters. I love these albums for years, and I'm glad to hear them finally get the attention to the detail audio-wise that they deserve. So again, you know, both LA Guns albums. And then recently I also picked up a band called Saigon Kick. This is their third record called Water. Their first two records are available on Rock Candy as well. Saigon Kick is a band out of Florida. I think their first record came out in 89 or 90. They had a massive hit in 1992 with a song called Love Is On The Way. But unfortunately for them, you know, the success didn't carry over into their third record. So again, like a lot of these bands, their music kind of fell by the wayside, you know, as far as record labels remastering or doing anything else with their catalog. So I'm glad to see a company, you know, there's a company out there like Rock Candy that is actually taking the initiative and, you know, remastering and repackaging and re-releasing all of these old albums that for me, you know, meant a lot to my childhood growing up. And again, like I said, some of the other bands, notable bands that have Rock Candy remasters, Rat, each of their first four records is remastered and re-released on Rock Candy. Faster Pussycat, Dokken, Quiet Riot, Europe, the aforementioned Head East, Saigon, and LA Guns, or Saigon Kick and LA Guns, Bullet Boys, Winger, Damn Yankees, The Scream, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's some other companies too. I think there's another one called Bad Reputation Records that's overseas somewhere, maybe Japan. I'm not entirely sure where they're located at, but I know they've done, or they've remastered some records by Cinderella and some of the other 70s and 80s groups as well. So check those out. Now, the last thing I'll say before I end this is, you know, remastering will help do a lot of things. It'll help bring out certain sounds and, you know, maybe bring an analog album into the digital age and whatnot. One thing remastering will not do is take a crappy album and make it good. Crappy album is still a crappy album. So if you see something on there that you were like, oh, I was kind of on the fence with these guys when they were popular, but I'll see what they sound like now that it's been remastered. Chances are you're gonna get it and it's still gonna suck. So again, sometimes remastering might be like, putting sprinkles on a turd. So you might buy the album, and think like, oh, it's remastered, it's repackaged, it's just great. And you put it on, it's like, oh, this is still terrible, So again, don't, think of remastering as making something, turning, something that's really, really bad, into something good. Anyway, I feel like I'm just kind of rambling now. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in to my vlog number 2 here. I do have some ideas coming up for the future, a couple of those. I've got a vlog I'd like to do about what I consider to be transition bands. Bands that are kind of somewhere in between, hair metal and grunge, that kind of maybe fell in one or the other, unfortunately for them. And also, at some point I'd really like to cover, some underrated albums by big bands. Maybe bands who at low points in their career, sales-wise, still managed to put out some really, really good music. And I'd like to go over some of those albums. And I've got some other ideas coming down the pike. Again, at some point, maybe I'll do a review of this Whitesnake box set, kind of like I did with the Def Leppards. More to come on that. But, again, just thank you guys for checking this out, and helping me get things that have been stuck inside my head for years out into another format. So, see you later. Thanks.